Hi, welcome to Encash Tech Videos. Today we will check one of the simplest ways to create a new Angular 4 app and how to integrate it with an ASP.NET Core 2.0 Web API. So let's start by having a look at what are the steps involved in creating such an application, and then we will go through each step in detail. So start with creating a new Angular 4 project, then create a .NET Web API project within the same folder. Then third step is to change the Angular build output directory to www root directory. And finally, enable the Web API to output the static files and default files from the output directory. Now let's start by going through each step in detail. In the VS Code editor, go to the terminal and set the current path to the folder where we want to create the project. Use Angular's command line interface to create new Angular app, and then wait for some time so that the project gets created and while all node module dependencies get installed. So it's done. Once done, you verify the setup by running the ngserve command. Let's verify. Once done, everything looks good. Let's create a page in this app to display a list of items which we plan to fetch from ASP.NET Core Web API. So let's go to app.component.html and replace the existing code with a simple ng-for, which loops over a list of items which is nothing but an array of strings. Accordingly, modify the component. So let's go to app.component.ts, replace the existing code with a new variable items that is nothing but an array of strings. Let's initialize this variable so that we come up with some dummy data before we pull data from the Web API. So let's write some dummy data over here and check if it looks good. So all is fine as long as we are displaying some dummy data. Next we go ahead and create a .NET Core Web API project. So that's the second step. So again we use the .NET command CLI, .NET new Web API, which creates a new Web API project. So restoring packages, and then finally it completes the creation. So it comes up with some project files, which is some default controllers and the startup class. So let's go to the default controller that was created, rename it to items controller so that it matches the name that we are going to pull in the client. Rename the class as well. And so since this is a web API, it creates methods for all the HTTP verbs, but since we are just going to fetch data and display, only get items verb is enough for us. Let's modify the method to return some list of items, say some product names. That's it. Run the project using .NET run command. Let's build the project, and it should display our results on localhost 5000 API. That's the default port and URL. Next we open Angular CLI.json to integrate both the apps Angular and .NET Web API. The output of ng app should be pointing to the output of .NET build directory, which is www root in this case. Now next go to the startup.cs file and modify the configure method to use the static files and default files so that it serves all the default files and static files, which are client-side files, from www root directory. That's all in .NET side. Next we prepare the Angular app to read data from the service. So let's go to the app module class and import the HTTP module from Angular HTTP. Also add it to the imports array. Next we have to create a service, say app service in this case, which is an injectable service, so that it can be injected to our component where we want to pull data from the service. So let's import the core classes of HTTP requests. So HTTP response from Angular HTTP. Also we need to import the observable library. So to mark the service with injectable annotation, which is a prerequisite for any class to be injectable. Now that's the app service class that we are creating, which exposes a get items method. So we want this method to be responsible to return a subscription, which returns a list of items from the service. So API items is the URL that we have exposed on the .NET Web API side. Let's inject the HTTP service, that is what we have imported. Now the constructor is done, and we have to now call the HTTP get method, providing the required URL, and write a map method so that values are returned whenever the service returns data. So the response should be of type response. So this is, I think, some problem, but let's see. We are writing a return, still we see some errors. Let's go ahead and see how it works. So since we have created a new service, we have to also add this to the providers list in the module section. So go to app module and import app service, add it to the providers array. in the component as well, we have to write the app service related code so that we can fetch data using the app service. So from the same location, we can remove the old code and write app service, inject the app service basically, so that we can use it in a method which populates the items. Remove the dummy data, so no more that is required now. Next, let us create a method called say populate items. Sorry, the caps lock got on by mistake, and okay. So this method is responsible for populating the items array that we are using in the HTML. It will call the get items method of the app service and subscribe to its return value. As soon as the value is returned, we set the items variable to the result of the service value. Also, we need to call it in the constructor so that it's populated as soon as the component gets created. Okay, so we have got the error somewhere, and yes, so some problem over here. We expected it to behave that way. I think there is some parenthesis problem, so it should be built. Yeah, okay, so it's built currently with a successful output, and we can run the .NET command, which is required for the output directory to be to reflect the changes that we did on the .NET side as well. And check the localhost 5000, so nothing is rendered, so some problem is still there. I think we have to import the map method from RxJS. So map operator was missing. Let's import that and check. So again we build the Angular app so that it outputs the all files with the modified build to www root directory, and again .NET run so that we get a reflected the new app. Let's go to localhost 5000 now and check. Okay, so everything looks good. So that's it. Thanks for watching the video.